Hello, everyone. Welcome to Solution Focused. My name is Charles Theodore Monk, and I will be your presenter today. If you can hear me, please go ahead and let me know by saying something in the chat. You can go ahead and say hi, you can say hello, or you can simply say, Yes, I can hear you. That way, I know you guys can hear me so that we don't have any problems with either video or audio issues. So, once again, for those of you who are just coming in and who are here and haven't done it yet, please go ahead and let me know you can hear me by saying something in the chat. And then we'll be able to proceed accordingly once everyone has been to make sure that everyone has good connection. All right, and we're gonna give about another 2 minutes for people to come into the webinar because sometimes we do run a little late, so we do want to be mindful of those people's time. But for those of you who are here already, what we'll do is we'll go over what we're going to talk about today. And based off our topic, we're going to be talking about being a person who is solution focused. This could apply to business, which is what we're specifically discussing today, but it's also a thing that we can take into life because during life, there are situations that are difficult to go through. And sometimes we just need to learn how to be focused on the solution to those difficult situations. Because sometimes those situations are simply out of our control, and we don't really have a choice to be part of it. And we simply don't want to be part of that situation. But we have to be solution focused to make sure we get out of those situations, right? Instead of being stuck in a bad situation and complaining about it, we should be able to be in a bad situation and think, how can I perform the best? Or how can I do the best while I am in this situation, right? And one thing that I encourage you guys to do throughout today's webinar is to have something to take down notes on. That could be a piece of paper with a pen or pencil or on your cell phone. It's just great, I believe, to take down notes so we can briefly practice what we studied before and we actually remember more when we write things down. So I encourage you guys, grab something to take down some notes on, to write down maybe new material that we're going over today, or simply a topic that you think is important to remember or to write down. All right. And guys, today, just like our standard, we're gonna go on for about a half hour. And I encourage you guys use the chat box throughout today's webinar. Keep in touch with me. There will be maybe you can answer some questions that I'll ask you, or simply you can have comments to what I am saying. All right. So first thing what we'll do is we'll talk about the difference of being a person who is what we call problem focused and a person who is what we want to be, which is solution focused, right? And we're going to talk about having goals and creating solution that is very important in our long-term picture, because a lot of the times being a person who is solution focused, it is a long-term thing. It doesn't happen just maybe in a day. Sometimes it does, but we'll also talk about how to handle those long-term difficult situations, and we'll go over some vocabulary that we can use to sort of describe these situations in the future. So for those of you joining us right now, we're just about to dive into our topic of being solution focused. And before we dive into anything too deep, we'll just break it down on what does it mean to be solution focused. So being a person who is solution focused is up on our screen, and it simply means to be focused on how to solve a problem rather than the problem itself. So this doesn't mean that we disregard the problem and we ignore it. No, we have to acknowledge that there is a problem, but we switch our focus from the problem itself to focusing on what I can do to make sure I am okay during this difficult situation or how I can get out of this problem, right? So that's our main topic for today. Keep it in your mind. What does it mean to be a person who is solution focused? So let me ask you, what do you guys think? Would you say you are a problem focused person? Or do you think you are more of a solution focused person? For me, I would say it sort of depends on the situation. Sometimes it is very easy to easily it's very easy for a lot of us to be more problem focused than anything, right? And sometimes we get through those difficult situations where we simply just don't know what to do, and that happens to all of us. But I do my best to be a person who is solution focused and to get out of my problems rather than just dwell on the problems itself. So now that we've kind of brought up this question, let's briefly talk about what it means to be this type of person. So we'll focus on sort of our train of thought, our thinking process. So a problem focused mind simply will tell us what is going on and sort of looking at the problem. A problem focused mind sort of dwells on the problem. And that is the easiest thing to do. When there are those very difficult situations in our life, oftentimes we don't know what to do and we don't know how to function and we get very depressed or sad looking at these problems, right? And it's very, very easy to do that. Almost everyone goes through those same problems as us, right? There are certain problems, maybe in our work, in our schooling, in our family, our finances, whatever it may be. And these giants sort of look like they're unconquerable and we can never get past it. So it's very easy to look at the problem. But what we're wanting to emphasize is the train of thought of being a person who has a solution focused mind. And that mind simply says, how can I get out of the problem? So maybe there is someone, as an example, who is having a hard time at work. There's a lot of difficult situations, maybe difficult people that they're having to work with or get through. And oftentimes we have that mindset of, oh, this is, I don't enjoy this at all. And it's awful being stuck with this person at my workplace. But what we want to try to do is acknowledge that, yes, maybe it is a little difficult being with this person. But what we want to do is think, all right, how can I make the best out of the situation that I'm in? That is a solution focused mind. How can I make sure I'm having the best possible experience in this difficult time or during this problem that I can still benefit from it, right? Maybe you failed a test for those of you who are in school, and it happens. Sometimes we fail a test. But instead of looking at it as, wow, I failed, that's awful, we should look at it saying, yes, I failed, and that is sad. But what did I do that made me fail? And what can I do to make sure I don't fail in the future? So oftentimes when we encounter problems, we don't have to look at it as more of this is an impossible thing and we can no longer get past it. We should look at it as like, okay, this is a problem. What can I learn from it? And what can I personally do to make sure I get out of this problem, right? So what we'll do now is, since we've sort of focused on the train of thought of being a person who is solution focused and a person who is problem focused, we'll simply go over three different categories that are sort of looked at as big areas where we will encounter problems. Number one is work. For those of you who are working, there are problems we will encounter in our workplace, and oftentimes it's very difficult to deal with these problems, right? And the main thing that we have to encounter at work is simply our tasks. And our tasks are simply referred to as something that has to be done. So when we talk about something that has to be done, maybe you have a deadline, you have to submit a project by a certain day, maybe that you have to go ahead and talk to a client that gets very on your nerves and you don't enjoy talking to them, or maybe there are just tasks that you have to do that seem impossible. Maybe your boss gave you extra work and you're already so busy, so you don't know how you're going to do it. And see, when we get stuck in these situations, it's so easy to look at these situations in our tasks and be a person who is problem focused and look at, oh, this is too much task to do, right? There's so many tasks to do and I don't know what I'm going to do. But we want to switch from that negative mindset to the positive mindset of, all right, there is this problem with the task that I'm experiencing at work, but what can I personally do to make sure that I am no longer encountering these problems, right? Or what can I do to make sure that these problems don't stay negative, but I turn it into something that is considered positive, right? It's not ignoring the problem, right? Being a person who is solution focused is not ignoring the problem. Being a person who is solution focused is simply a person who is focusing on what can I do that I'm in the problem to get out of it, right? And that's the same thing with tasks. Instead of looking at it as this too much to do, what can I do to make sure I'm still doing my best and get this task done? All right. Another thing for those of you who are still in school, we get drowned with assignments, right? For those of you maybe are in college, maybe high school or university, whatever it may be, we are all have gone to school, right? And throughout our history of whatever school experience we've may had, there are times when our teachers give us a lot of assignments. Maybe we have to read a certain book that we're not going to enjoy. Maybe there's a test that is super hard and it's not our expertise, right? Maybe we love science and we have a test coming up in history, which we're not good at. And that is a problem, right? Because we know we're not good at something. But when we have our assignments, we can kind of break it down as saying something that is given in the relation to studies, right? So we're not looking at an assignment in the work standpoint. We're looking at assignments in the school standpoint, right? We're focusing more on what the teachers give the students that we have to do either study or we have to prepare for maybe an exam or it's some sort of material we have to practice outside of our school hours. And oftentimes, growing up, most of us don't enjoy school because we want to do other things, going out with friends, playing more sports, spending more time at home, and doing things we enjoy. So, therefore, if you're that type of person and you simply just don't enjoy going to school, it could be a big problem when you have a big assignment coming up that is given from your teacher or your professor. And it's very easy to get caught up in saying, "Ah, you know what, maybe I just won't do this and I'll accept the consequences." But see, that's the mindset we want to switch. Instead of sort of being a lazy person when it comes down to assignments, we want to be a person on looking at our assignments and saying, how can I be better through these assignments, right? What can I learn that I haven't learned before? How can I practice harder than I used to practice, right? We want to tackle this from the assignment of making ourselves better, right? Even though it may be something we don't like. Maybe you don't like history, but you have a history exam or a history test. What you want to do is, all right, what can I do to make this experience as enjoyable as possible? And what can I learn from this experience that I did not know before, right? Simply taking that negative mindset and switching it over to a positive mindset. All right. So remember those two terms that we went over: task, which is something that has to be done, and an assignment is something that's given in relation to your studies, right? And now we'll tackle our third situation that a lot of us encounter, and that is our personal life. And for those of you who are older, even those of you who are younger, you know that personal life does lead to a lot of problems. Maybe with family, maybe with friends, maybe even with work, or things we want to do in life seem impossible, right? Maybe we have plans that we set for ourselves. Maybe I want to retire at the age of 55, right? And you're already 40 and you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know how I can retire in 15 years, right? It doesn't seem possible. But remember, what we want to do is sort of look at that problem, acknowledge it, but sort of fight it and say, what can I do to fight this problem? And the first area a lot of people experience sort of problems in our personal life would be our finances, which is the management of money, right? For those of you, after you go to school, most of us have to go and get a job. And when we get a job, we have to sort of know what we're doing with that money we earn, right? We earn money and then we have our bills, right? We have to, we have to pay our rent. We have to pay for our grocery. We have to pay our electricity. There's so many things that sort of overwhelm people throughout their lives with finances. We want to buy this new shirt. We want to buy these new shoes. We want to buy this car, but we don't know how we're going to do it because looking at our finances, sometimes it seems impossible to be able to achieve that goal. Maybe you want to save a certain amount of money by the end of the year to go on vacation, but you're looking at it and you're like, I don't have much time left to be save this money so I can go on my vacation. But we want to tackle it as, how can I make my life as enjoyable with the finances I earn now? Do you have to spend a little less going out every month so that you can have more money in your savings? Do you have to not buy that new pair of shoes so that you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay your electricity? what can I do with what's given to me now so I can still enjoy life, right? Obviously, there are times with finances where it will get harder when we don't have a job or we aren't able to work because of maybe a health reason or a situation. And that is a problem, right? But oftentimes, most of us are blessed in the situations we get, and we have a job and we have income that is coming in. And what we want to look at is how can I make my life as enjoyable? How can I get the most out of life with the income I'm making now? Maybe I need to move to a less expensive flat. Maybe I need to stop spending money so much going out with my friends or have to stop buying new things. So you have sort of that breathing room. Because when it comes to finances, when we have money in our bank account, it sort of makes us feel safe. That no matter what happens, we'll still be able to enjoy life because we know we have money in our bank account, right? So when it comes down to finances, I encourage you guys, instead of looking at it as an impossible situation, as impossible as it might seem, it's still a possible situation, right? We want to look at it as how can I still get the best out of life with the finances I have now, all right? And another area that comes up a lot is with our personal life is our goals. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe you want to go on a new vacation at the end of the year, right? Something that you're working for. Maybe you want to buy a house. Maybe you want to buy a new car. And you have goals, right? Maybe by the time you're 50, you want to retire. Or maybe you want to travel the world. Whatever you're working towards, a lot of the times we shoot for the stars, right? We set goals that are almost sort of impossible. And then we get sort of mad at ourselves when we don't achieve those goals. One thing that we can do to be a solution focused person is set goals that are achievable. So instead of maybe saying, I want to save $100,000 at the end of the year, knowing you don't make that much, maybe you could say, I want to save $50,000 minimum, and I want to save more than that, right? Or if you're saying, I want to travel the world, why don't we break it down into certain goals as I want to go to this country and then this country? That way, we can look at it as we're achieving these small goals that lead to our bigger goals. Because when we shoot for these impossible standards, it's very disheartening when we don't achieve them. So, one thing we can do and make that problem a little easier on us is set sub goals. So, the smaller versions of that big goal so that we get to achieve that bigger goal in our life, right? And oftentimes, like I mentioned earlier, it's discouraging. But we want to break it down and say, I achieved this and this. And we keep on adding up. And then eventually we reach that big goal that we want to have. So I encourage you guys, set goals that seem impossible, but set goals that can add up to that impossible standard or that very big standard that you may have. Dream big, set big goals, and work hard and do your best to achieve those goals. It's 100% possible when you give your best effort, right? So, what we'll do now is we'll go over two idiom phrases that a lot of us use when we sort of feel overwhelmed by our problems. These are two idioms that we can use when we are looking at our problem with a problem focused mindset. Our first one is wit's end. If I use the phrase wit's end, I simply mean that I am at the limit of my capabilities. I have nothing else to give. I gave it my best shot, and that's all I got. I don't have much more to give. This is all. This is it. This is all I have. Maybe it could be money, maybe it could be energy, maybe it could be time. But when you have nothing left, no more to give, you are considered to be at your wit's end. All right? Now, what we'll do is we'll give an example sentence for this one. If I go ahead and say, if I am at my wit's end, I am at my wit's end, it means I am at the end. I don't have much more I can do. This is pretty much all I got, right? That's all I have left. I have no more capabilities, all right? Now, idioms, all right? Idiom number 2, a lot on my plate. If I am going ahead and saying, I have a lot on my plate, it simply means I have too much. And by the meaning of too much, as you see in the picture below in the bottom right, you see that there's a guy with a lot of pancakes. He has too much. He can't handle it all. He can't eat it all. And if we look at it and our or understanding of our topic today, we could use a sentence like, I have a lot on my plate. Maybe you have work and you have maybe a second job while you have to take care of kids, or you could be working while you're getting your education. It's so much. You have a lot on your plate. It seems like there's more than you can actually handle. And it seems like a very impossible situation. Right? So these are two great idioms I encourage you guys to use when you encounter problems. And it feels like it's impossible because it's a great way to describe how we feel, right? It's good to have a good base knowledge and a good base understanding of the language. But we want to be able, as we learn, to add more complex vocabulary and phrases. So these are two great idioms that we can use to express ourselves. All right? So that sort of pushes us past the vocabulary that we talked about, right? We talked about the three areas we encounter problems in, which would be our work, our school, and our personal life. And we learned some vocabulary that describes that best. And we went over to vocabulary phrases, which we call idioms. All right. And now we'll simply go over three main points on how to get a solution focused mind. The first thing we have to always watch out for is our thinking. Be careful of what you think because a lot of the times the mind can sort of go astray and you could encounter situations that you're sort of not really familiar with, and your mind can go to very deep places, right? And your mind just sort of wanders a lot of the time. And it's very easy to encounter that kind of problem, right? It's natural, it's not hard. But what we want to do is we want to catch our thoughts. When we think about our thoughts, right? If we see a thought that comes into our mind and we notice that's not a good thought, what we should do is we should stop that thought and replace it with a positive thought. Catch the negative thoughts, replace it with a positive one. And the more you practice that, the more positive thoughts you'll naturally have than your negative thoughts. All right? A second point we can go over, simply the importance of rest. A lot of the times when we encounter problems, we go into a frenzy amount of work. We work crazy and we work ourselves to the point where we're at our wits' end. We have nothing else to give. And when we're at that point, our problems seem impossible. One of the best things we could do for ourselves in those situations is simply rest. Give ourselves a break. Maybe take a day off. Maybe take a nap. Just rest your mind, rest your body so that you can encounter that problem with more energy. It's better to take a little bit of time to rest, to encounter a problem later on, than to keep going at a problem with no energy. Because then you're not going to be able to fight when your tank is on empty. You want to make sure you're giving it your best all the time. Which is, if you're in work, a day off is a great thing to do. All right? Now, the last thing we'll do, simply train your mindset. And when I say train, I could summarize it in a quote that is up on our screen now. And it says, train your mind to think a certain way, and it will. It will take practice, but you will get there. Same thing like I mentioned earlier. Catch the negative thoughts, push it with the positive thoughts, and you train your brain. It's sort of like your muscles. Your brain is a muscle, and you can train it to think a certain way. It might be impossible to train your brain, but your brain is a muscle, just like the rest of your body. For example, if you go to the gym all the time, you're lifting weights, you're being diligent in your exercises, you're going to get stronger. The same thing goes with your brain. When you work out your brain, you're making sure you're thinking the right way. It becomes a habit, right? And your brain will get stronger. And the stronger your brain is, the more problems you can handle. And remember, when we get all those problems, if we have a good mindset, if we think the right thoughts, we'll be a person who is solution focused and not a person who is problem focused. All right? So guys, that pushes us to the end of simply all the big material that we'll talk about today. And what we'll do now is we'll go over a quick summary of what we learned to refresh our memory. And remember, to start off, we talked about what a solution-focused mindset is. We talked about what does it mean to be a person who is solution-focused. And we talked about the solution-focused mindset versus the problem-focused mindset. All right? And to cap it off, we talked about some good vocabulary we can use. Remember, we talked about the three popular areas we encounter problems in our work, and that would be our work life, our school life, and our personal life, right? And we went over two great idioms that we can use when we feel like we have nothing left or we have too much to do. All right? So guys, that sort of pushes us to the end of all our big material today, and we're now at our Q&A section where if you have any questions, you can feel free to go ahead and ask them, and I'll do my best to answer what questions you guys might have. But for those of you who don't have any questions, I'm going to go ahead and throw two quick polls up on our screen, and they will just ask you questions so that we here at Tutlo know what you thought of the webinar. Question number one says, did you find the webinar useful? So did you learn something today that you didn't know? Simply, did you get to spend time talking about a topic that you thought was very important? So in summary, did you think that this was a beneficial 30 minutes for you? Go ahead, let me know. I'll leave this up for about another 10 seconds, and then I'll move on to poll question number two. And remember, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask them, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right? But for those of you with no questions, we have one more poll question. Would you like to participate in a similar event in the future? So would you like to do another webinar either with me or with another tutor? Go ahead, let me know, guys. What would you like to do? Would you like to do it again or no? Simple question, yes or no. All right, so thank you for filling out these polls, guys. Like I mentioned, it just helps us here at Tutlo understand what you thought of the webinar. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you guys enjoyed it and you guys learned something. Because that's our goal here, is to make sure you guys come out better every single class or every single webinar that you have done. All right. So guys, before we wrap up, we're going to go ahead and talk quickly about Tutlo social media. And one thing I want to emphasize is that social media is everywhere and it's always filling us with new information, and we're always learning on social media. So I encourage you guys, check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and our YouTube channel. And when you do so, there will be a bunch of very helpful phrases or videos that will be posted for you guys to practice quickly. And remember, the more you practice, the better you get. So why not use social media to the best of our advantage and learn something while we're enjoying our free time? All right. So guys, that sort of brings us to the end of our time together. So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to give a quick thank you to each and every one of you who have came into the webinar today. If this is our first time meeting, I hope you enjoyed it. And if we've met before, I'm glad that you guys were back today. And I hope you enjoyed it as well. And simply, guys, I look forward to seeing you guys again soon through a private lesson on the Tutlo platform or through another webinar in the near future. So if you guys enjoyed the webinar today, I encourage you keep an eye out for webinars in the future. There are webinars throughout the week. So if you have time and you loved the webinar today, I encourage you check out the other ones, either by me or other tutors. They are great and another good way for us to practice our English. Until we meet again, once again, I want to say thank you. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Until then, everyone take care and stay safe. And I hope to see you guys soon. Goodbye.